Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. I am Elisa Elin from ISSS. On behalf of all of ISSS and our presenters, I want to offer you a warm welcome on this cold Minnesota day. And again, thank you for joining us. ISSS is hosting this session, and the staff, the ISSS staff who are here today are myself and Tracy Senti. We work with the tax resources that ISSS has, and then Jay Joswick, who is our technical expert today. So big thank you to both of you. And then we have several other presenters, and one of them is Maria Clark, and she'll introduce the rest in just a minute. And let's see, I just had a couple other comments before I pass it to Maria. The session is being recorded today because we want to be able to make it available to you again if you want to watch it again, but also to people who aren't able to make it today. So, so we will send out information about that on our weekly update announcement soon about when that recording will be available, and then it will be on NRVTAP's website, and probably you know, a couple announcements in the ISSS weekly update. And also, because we're recording, I just want to say, if you don't want to be on the recording, just be sure to have your camera off, and you can change your name if you'd like to, or just take your name off. I'm not sure that would happen anyways, that you would end up on the recording, but just to make sure, you can take your camera off. Let's see, lastly, I just wanted to mention that ISSS's role with taxes is pretty limited, but I do encourage you to take a look at our tax resources website. Really, our job is not to give you tax advice, because we are not tax experts, but to make information available to you and to help direct you to the correct resources. So I hope you will take some time to look at the tax website on ISSS's webpage if you haven't already, and you'll find a lot of information about resources there. So again, welcome, and I'm going to pass it to Maria Clark.
All right, thank you very much, Elisa, and thank you everyone, and welcome again. So we are going to do a few quick introductions here and then get into the heart of our agenda today. We're going to go through a federal tax overview as well as a Minnesota state tax overview. And then we'll talk about the North and NRVTAP International Tax Clinic. We'll talk about our services and support that we provide. And then we'll do a demo. We'll do an actual return with a pretend individual to show you kind of what the software looks like and how to use our tools. We also will have a couple of Q&A sessions for everyone. If you have kind of general questions that would apply to multiple people, please feel free to put those into the chat. You can change your name on your Zoom name if you don't want your name to show up in the chat, but otherwise put those in the chat. We'll take a break right before the demo and go through those general questions and answer a few of those for you right away. And then after we do the demo, we will also have people stay in breakout rooms, and we can answer individual questions there. So if you have a personal question that only applies to you, you're going to want to wait and talk to somebody in the breakout room. In those breakout rooms, we're going to have representatives from ISSS. They can answer questions about visas. We also have a representative here from U of M Payroll, Blaine. He's going to be talking to you a little bit about the U of M documents that you may receive. I am Maria Clark from the Non-Resident Tax Help Group. We also have Asuka from NRVTAP, which is a student organization. And then we have two IRS representatives. We have Craig Salar from SPEC, so it's the Stakeholder Partnerships, Education and Communication, if I've gotten that right, and then David Eckert as well. And so we're all here to try to help give you some information about how to do your taxes both on a federal and state basis, and make sure you stay current to your requirements. And this is our orientation. So a little bit about the two groups. So North is a 501c3 charitable organization. We provide tax services and tax education for those who are non-resident aliens. We partner with NRVTAP, which is a U of M student organization that helps international students and scholars meet their tax requirements. And I'm going to turn it over to Asuka now. She's going to give you a couple of words and some information about NRVTAP.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. So like Maria mentioned earlier, NRVTAP is a nonprofit organization that is an IRS and VITA approved program. We are the only organization that provides free tax assistance to non-residents at the University of Minnesota system. And we are aimed at assisting mainly international students and scholars across the University of Minnesota system. Next slide, please. So for 2021 tax year, we have already trained all our volunteers. However, if anyone here is interested in joining us for the 2022 tax year, we would really appreciate that. If you volunteer with us, you can work with people from different backgrounds and also build an understanding of the American tax system. I can file my own taxes after joining NRVTAP. It's a huge plus. And NRVTAP is also a growing student group with lots of opportunities, which also includes, next slide, please, some leadership opportunities. These are the leadership position we have in NRVTAP. And if you are interested in joining as a volunteer or any of the board members, please reach out to us and also check out our website, NRVTAP.com, for more information to file your taxes and also our opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Asuka. All right. Okay, so let's start of it. Federal tax overview. So I'm going to start with some kind of general concepts. And the first one is that it is every person's individual responsibility to calculate and pay their own taxes. So you each need to do that as an individual. Your employer will withhold tax from your earnings, but it is an estimate of what your federal tax and state tax liability will be. Do not know the exact amount. They use reference tables that calculate an estimated amount. And at the end of the year, you are required to complete a federal and state tax return that's going to actually determine the amount of tax you're owed. Filing your taxes, whether you do it by e-file or by sending it in on mail, is how you tell the IRS and the state how much calculated that you owe. And you may need to do this even if you owe no taxes. You have to tell them, I don't owe any taxes. This is why, and this is why. That's what the tax return does. And every taxpayer is ultimately responsible for the information on their tax return. So when you send it in, you're signing and you're saying that this information under penalties of perjury is correct and accurate to the best of your knowledge. So taxes are done on a calendar year basis. So when we look at it, we're talking about 2021 for your taxes, and we're looking at all income and expenses from January 1st through December 31st. You do not file a tax return for a specific job or an income document or a part of the year. It's got to be for the entire year. And this is an income tax, so it's about the money that is coming into you. Some types of income are not taxed, but many are. So for example, a gift from your parents would not be taxed, but if you work at the University of Minnesota, that would be income that would be taxed. The more income you earn, the more tax you will pay. So the rate starts at 10% and goes up to 37%. And there are lots and lots and lots of special rules, exemptions, and adjustments. The tax code's been around for over 100 years, and we've got 100 years of different interest groups trying to change the rules and economic behavioral adjustments that have been tried to be put in place. So what that means is that it's very complicated, and all of those rules depend on your individual situation. So no person's income tax return is ever the same as another person's tax return. There's always something unique and different. So that's why you have to determine your own tax by understanding what your personal situation is and preparing the forms. So when you file a return, you need a tax ID number. The type of number that you will receive is going to depend, again, on your personal situation. If you are authorized to work here in the US under your visa, you will be eligible for a Social Security number. This could be for either on-campus employment or OPT, CPT. If you get US income, but you are not authorized to work, you will need to get an ITIN, an Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. This usually applies to people who get scholarships and fellowships, but are not authorized to work. If you do not need to file a tax return, if you do not have any income that you have to report, you cannot get a tax ID number. The IRS only provides those to individuals who have to file a return. If you do need to get one, please contact us at itin@nrvtap.com. We can help you through that process. But again, you only will need that ITIN number if you have US income, like a scholarship or fellowship, and you're not authorized to work. So the number of people that need one is actually relatively small. Okay, our next concept is about residency. Residency is a very new word for taxes because it means something very different than from immigration. For US tax residency, the IRS considers someone an alien. Their words is anyone that is not a citizen of the United States, either by birth or naturalization. A resident alien will be taxed the same as a US citizen. They might have some benefits, and they are subject to tax on their worldwide income. A non-resident alien is subject to special tax rules. They have limited deductions and credits, but are only taxed on their US source income. So who is a non-resident alien? So a non-resident alien is somebody that does not have a permanent resident status. So they're not a citizen, they're not a permanent resident, they don't have a green card, and they also have not passed what's called the substantial presence test. So if a person is in the US long enough, they'll pay taxes like a citizen or resident, and this test is what determines long enough. And then again, resident alien for tax purposes does not mean resident for immigration purposes. They're different things. This is the actual math of the substantial presence test. It basically does the calculation for what is long enough to be treated as a resident. I'm not going to go through it. If you want to try to do those calculations, you can. I'm going to show you a shortcut that we've got for you a little bit further down in our presentation. However, there are some people that are exempt from the substantial presence test, not exempt from taxes, just exempt from this test. Those people are students on an FJM or Q1 visa, 5 calendar years that they are here in the US. That's their first 5 lifetime years that they are here on that type of visa. Likewise, a teacher or trainee that's on a J1 or Q1 non-student visa who is not previously exempt as a teacher or trainee for any part of 2 of the preceding 6 calendar years. Again, that's a little bit of a mouthful and difficult to complicate or to calculate, but we'll show you a tool that'll help make that easy for you in a little bit. Family members that are here on a -2 visa will use those same rules. And if you are exempt, you don't count the days that you are exempt towards the substantial presence test. Usually this is going to mean that you're a non-resident alien during your years of exemption. I can't guarantee it, but almost always that's going to be the case. So who is going to be a resident alien? A student who has been here for longer than those 5 calendar years and passes the substantial presence test will be a resident alien. Likewise, a teacher or researcher that has been here for more than 2 out of those 6 calendar years and who also passes that test. Or a non-resident alien or a dual status alien who gets married to a resident and chooses to be a resident for the whole year. So resident aliens can get free tax help, just like non-resident aliens can. VITA has historically been an organization at the U of M that has provided this assistance. Unfortunately, it looks like they are not open this year. However, you've got several other options. You can use our software to prepare a resident return. We don't have quite the same support in terms of guides to help you, but you can use our software. The IRS also has free software on this link here. You want to make sure you double check that you qualify because some of the options do have income limits and some will either not do your state or they will charge a fee for it. In addition, you can find other free tax clinics using the Minnesota Department of Revenue's search tool. There are sites around the Twin Cities that will prepare resident returns. So there are good options for you if you turn out to be a resident alien this year. All right, I'm going to go through a couple of examples. So Sam is an F1 student. He came here in 2018. Will he be a resident or non-resident in 2021? The answer is non-resident because he's got 5 years. He's got 18, 19, 20, and 21. So he's on his 4th year. He is going to be a non-resident. His wife came with him on an F2 visa. Is she going to be a non-resident or resident? She's not a student, but she uses those same rules. So she will also be a non-resident alien. Juanita is a teacher. She came here on December 30th, 2019. Is she going to be a resident or non-resident? The answer is resident, because even though she was only here for 2 days in 2019, that still counts for her first year. So 2019 and 2020 were her 2 years. She was here all of 2021. She is a resident. Joan came here on an F1 visa, but got married to Bob, who got a green card in 2021. If they elect to file a return, can she be a resident, non-resident, or part-year resident? And the answer is resident. So she can choose to file a joint return and be a resident for all of 2021 because she's married to Bob. There are advantages and disadvantages of doing that, because they're a little bit out of scope of our presentation today, but you can talk to us more if you have questions about that. There is something called a dual status alien. This is a part-year non-resident and part-year resident. They have even more special filing requirements. Usually this occurs when someone comes to the US and passes the substantial presence test that same year, or is an exempt individual and then gets a permanent resident status. Those returns, those taxpayers will need to see a professional because those returns are out of scope for our tax plan. They're very complicated. All right, so if a resident alien is a US resident for tax purposes, a non-resident alien is not a US resident. But then the question is, what country are you a resident of? Because you will need to know this for preparing your tax return. So the things that we would want to understand are, where were you living prior to coming to the United States? Where is your permanent home? Not just a temporary visit, but where is it that you come from, so to speak? What is your place of business or employment, your permanent home? Where does your family live? What is your citizenship or passport? What is your place that you can stay permanently or indefinitely? Almost always, those things are all going to be the same, but occasionally they can be a little different. So here are a couple of examples to kind of help you walk through. So Lisa will say attended a boarding school in France prior to coming to the US for college, but her family lives in China. She has a Chinese citizenship and passport. She returned to China during the summer when school wasn't in session. She was only gone temporarily for school. So we would say that Lisa is a resident of China. She is not a resident of France. Harold went to work at a ski resort down in New Zealand for 6 months before he came here to study. His family still lives in Norway. He's got Norway citizenship and passport. This is also going to be just a temporary absence. Even though he was not working there for a permanent or indefinite time period. So his residency is still going to be Norway. And our final example, Alma was originally from Syria. She left with her family and have received asylum in Germany. She's a Syrian citizen and has a Syrian passport, but she and her family do not expect to return to Syria. That is where they are making their home. Based on that, her country of tax residency would now be Germany instead of Syria. All right, so as we look for a return, so any person that is an exempt individual must file a form 8843, even if they have no income. You do not need to have a social security number or an ITIN if you only need to file this form. If you have one, you can e-file it, but otherwise you need to file it on paper. If you do have income, US income, you will need to use form 1040NR in addition to the form 8843. It is due on April 18th. It can be e-filed in most situations. And then these are the addresses if you have to send it in on paper, and we have all of that in our filing guides as well. A brief overview of how the US taxes the income for non-resident aliens. So in general, only US income is going to be taxable. So if you earned income working in your home country as a non-resident alien, the US is not going to tax that income. We don't really care about it. However, you must file with any amount of taxable income. You cannot file a joint return with your spouse. You have to use the married filing separate status. And married means married. It doesn't matter where your spouse is. If you are married to them, you are married for our tax purposes as well. If you work as an employee, your wages will be taxed. You may be able to claim a treaty that will exempt some income. It's usually an unlimited amount for teachers and researchers and a small amount for students. It may or may not be reported on a 1042-S. Your ability to claim a treaty is not dependent on the form that you receive that document or the documents your income. You can claim it if you have a W-2 or a 1042-S. You may get a scholarship, and those are going to be tax-free for everyone if they pay for things like tuition and required books and fees. If it pays for other expenses like a stipend or for room and board, it may be taxable unless you are able to claim a treaty exemption. If you have self-employment income, so you operate your own business, like you drive for Uber, that would usually be reported on a 1099 NEC or 1099 miscellaneous. Unfortunately, those returns, that income is out of scope for us to assist. If you have dividends and capital gains, which are sales of US stocks, those are generally going to be taxed at 30%. Sometimes you may get a lower rate if you have a treaty benefit, although those are quite complicated. They get reported on your 1040 NR. If you have bank interest, this is one of the little benefits for non-resident aliens, that is not taxable and that is not reported. So you do not need to include that on your tax return. If you have been playing with cryptocurrency and you've been selling or exchanging it, that is also going to be a capital gain, and that is out of scope for our IRS VITA clinics as well. For adjustments to your return, so usually you can get some amount of money that you don't have to pay income tax on. Those are deductions. So students from India will get a standard deduction where they get $12,525 they don't have to pay tax on. For everyone else, the amount you don't have to pay tax on is going to be based on the amount of money that you pay to a state or local government, as well as any charitable contributions you may have made. And unfortunately, there are essentially no credits for non-resident aliens. There are a few, but they're very rare. And there are absolutely no education credits. So if you receive a Form 1098-T, you do not need to use it as a non-resident alien. It's not a part of your tax return for the 1040 NR. All right. Non-resident aliens that are on F1 and J1 visas do not pay Social Security and Medicare taxes. However, if you are here long enough to become a resident alien, you will need to pay those. Likewise, any non-resident aliens that are on the -2 visa, they will have to pay Social Security taxes even when they are non-resident aliens. If you have that tax taken out and you're not supposed to pay, you should ask your employer for a refund. Usually the University of Minnesota is very good about this. They only take out those taxes when somebody is due them. But if you go work for another company at an internship, sometimes they are not as good. So you should try asking for that money back first. If that doesn't happen, if they won't give it back, these are the 2 forms that you would need to file with the IRS. There's some information about instructions there. If this applies to you, please let us know when you're at your appointment at the clinic, or you can send us an email at taxassistance@nrvtap.com. We're looking at supporting this for people. It kind of depends on how many folks need that. One important thing to know is that this is entirely separate from your income tax return. So it's not going to be due by April 18th. So if we do assist people, it will be after that main filing season is done, and we'll be helping people in the late April, May, June timeframe. All right, so that is a federal tax overview. We're going to move on to Minnesota tax. I'll remind you again, if you have generic questions about federal tax or Minnesota as we get into it, you can send those in the chat, and then we'll look through those here in just a few minutes and answer some of them, and then we can answer individual personal questions again at the end. So for Minnesota tax, we're going to start again with residency, and as maybe should be no surprise, Minnesota's residency is different than the IRS, which is different than immigration. And for non-resident aliens, your Minnesota residency will depend on whether or not you meet the 183-day rule. And that rule says that you will be a Minnesota resident if you spent at least 183 days in Minnesota, and any part of a day will count as a whole day. And then that you also rent, own, maintain, or occupy an abode. And an abode is just a legal way of saying a residence in Minnesota that is suitable for year-round use, considering it's super cold outside right now, and that is equipped with its own cooking, bathing, and sleeping facilities. So if both of those 2 tests are true, you will now be a Minnesota resident for the length of time that the second one, the renting, owning, maintaining, or occupying condition applies. So this can result in 3 kind of statuses for people. You can be a non-resident of Minnesota, and that would happen if, number 1, you were present in Minnesota for less than 183 days, or you were here for more than 183 days, but you never rented, and you or your spouse, if you're married, rented, owned, maintained, or occupied an abode. So this would often be somebody that stays in a dorm room, which may not have its own cooking and bathing facilities, would not be an abode, and so they would be a non-resident for the entire year. You could be a part-year resident of Minnesota. That would mean you are here for at least 183 days, and that you rented, owned, occupied, or maintained an abode for some part of the year. It doesn't have to be 183 days. It could be 30 days. It could be 200 days. The number of days is anything from more than 0 and less than 365. Because if it's 365, that will make you a full year resident of Minnesota. So you would be here for at least 183 days, and you rented for the entire year. Why does this matter? There's two main reasons. The first one is that only part year and full year residents are eligible for the property tax refund. To be eligible for that, again, you must be a full year or part year resident. So when we think about how many days 183 is, that's basically half of the year. So if you came here for the first time in the fall semester, say in August or September, you've not been here long enough. You would have had to arrive at the end of June and then stayed for the rest of the year to be a part year resident for Minnesota. You can also not be a dependent. You must have provided over half of your own support. And this does catch most of the students and scholars here at the University of Minnesota. You must live in a unit which is an abode. I've talked about that. The unit must have also been subject to property taxes. So some housing is not subject to property taxes, usually university housing, co-op housing as well. So if you don't pay property taxes to start with, you can't get a refund on them. It's available for any filing status. And if you were a homeowner, which is pretty unusual, but if you were, you must have a valid Social Security number. Help you determine if you are dependent. We have a worksheet as a part of our Minnesota Property Tax Refund Guide that kind of walks you through understanding, what were your expenses for the year? What is your income for the year? Did you provide more than 50% of your own support? And as you look at this, a couple of numbers to keep in mind from the U of M's cost of attendance numbers, undergrad non-resident tuition is around $34,000 a year. Your rent you would get from the property tax statements. When we look at trying to estimate food costs, so a U of M meal plan is about $2,400 a semester, so easily $5,000 to more $1,000. Clothing and fun would have to surely be something. It's certainly, you would need a nice coat to be living here in Minnesota. So as we add these things up, it's usually at least $42,000 of expenses to kind of live here in Minnesota and to go to school. And so as we look at that, we look at where did the money to pay for all of that comes from. And it can be from earnings, it can be from scholarships, it can be from loans, and often a good amount of it is from your family. And if your family provided more than 50%, you are a dependent and you are not going to be eligible for the property tax refund. All right, in addition to the property tax refund, there's another thing that your Minnesota residency affects, and that is what income you have to pay Minnesota taxes on. If you are a Minnesota non-resident, you will only pay Minnesota taxes on income from Minnesota sources. And that would be, for example, wages you earned working in Minnesota. So if you worked here in Minnesota for the University of Minnesota on campus, those wages would all be Minnesota source. So no matter what your Minnesota residency is, you will pay taxes on those in Minnesota. However, if you are a part year or a full year resident, you will pay Minnesota tax on all US income that was earned while you were a Minnesota resident. So for example, if you rented an apartment, you rented it for the entire year, so you're a full year resident. However, you physically left, you went to California, somewhere lovely and warm for the summer to do an internship, and then came back in the fall. But because you rented for the entire year, you are a full year Minnesota resident, and you will owe Minnesota tax on your California internship money, even though you are not physically present in Minnesota during that time period. We have, as a part of our Working in Minnesota and Another State Guide, we have a table, and we're working on an automatic tool for you so that you can determine your Minnesota residency and understand how you need to adjust it if you did work in another state and what income you need to pay your taxes on here in Minnesota. All right, for filing a Minnesota income tax return. So there is no equivalent to the Form 8843. So if you don't have any US income and you're an exempt individual, you only need to file that Form 8843. There's nothing that you need to do for Minnesota. If you do need to file a federal return and you have Minnesota income, then you must file a Minnesota return as well. If you are a non-resident alien from India, the limit is $12,525. For all others, it is $5. So if you have $5 of Minnesota income, you have to file a Minnesota return. The way the Minnesota return works is you do your federal first, you start with some numbers there, and then you adjust them to determine your Minnesota tax. And Minnesota also requires a copy of the federal return to be enclosed. So you can't do your Minnesota return until you have done your federal return. All right, just like our federal returns though, Minnesota's return is due on April 18th. You must also pay by April 18th for both the IRS and the Minnesota Department of Revenue. They will charge you interest and penalties if you do not file and pay on time. If you are eligible for the property tax refund, that is not actually due until August 15th. You can file it earlier, there's no problem with that, but it's not due until August 15th. It also means that they don't pay them out until after August 15th. So you do have to wait for that refund. And you can wait up to 1 year after the due date to claim your refund. All right, and then here is some additional information if you need to know it. All right, we're going to just go a couple minutes on the North and NRVTAP International Tax Clinic, and then we're going to pause for questions in the chat. All right, so our tax clinic is an IRS VITA FSA clinic, which is an awful lot of letters. So VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. So all of the people that are going to be helping you are volunteers. They are donating their time to try to help their fellow international students and fellow University of Minnesota students prepare their returns. We use what's called an FSA, Facilitated Self-Assistance Model. This is sort of think of it as a do-it-yourself plus help model. So we give you access to the software, and then we help you prepare the return. It is free, so we do not charge anyone. You will not have to pay any money to get your return prepared with us. Unfortunately, that means that there are sometimes people that we cannot help. So the people that we help are those who have an email that ends in .edu, which is certainly, I hope, everybody on this call today. Any non-resident aliens that are on FJ, M, and Q visas. Your income must also be below 73,000. That's a software limit. That's not something that we selected. And then some types of income are out of scope, such as cryptocurrency and self-employment income. If you are outside of our scope and you still have an email that ends in .edu, you can access our software. However, we cannot help you prepare your returns. So instead of being a DIY plus help, it is just a DIY. But that means that residents that are US residents can prepare the return with us. And if you want to do the understanding of how to report it, you can report your other types of income on this type of return as well. All right, so what do you provide? So we have 24/7 access to our TaxSlayer software. You can do federal and state returns, and you can e-file both your federal and state returns. We have our tool, Am I a Non-Resident Alien, that does all of the math for you to determine if you are a non-resident alien, if you are exempt, and if you're subject to that substantial presence test. You don't have to do the math. We basically will do it for you. We also have a tool called What Are My Treaty Benefits? That will let you enter your visa, your country of tax residency, and then your federal tax residency to determine what benefits you might be able to take advantage of. You can also enter your income documents so you can see if those match what your benefits are. This will tell you what basic scenario you should use for our guides, and then you can also see if there's a special circumstances guide that you need to use as well. And then again, we're working on a property tax dependency tool and a Minnesota residency tool. We provide guides, which are basically a step-by-step PDF with screenshots of how to prepare your return. We're going to do one of those here in a little bit. And we're working on giving some video demos for everyone so they can watch us doing it. We also have individualized support. So you can make an appointment with us. You can either do it in person here at the University of Minnesota in Twin Cities. We also have a clinic up at the University of Minnesota in Duluth on April 2nd. We have remote clinics as well, so you can join one of those from wherever you might be. We do restrict those to one appointment per individual. So if you are going to make an appointment, please make sure that you're ready and get through your return or get started on it before you come. We have office hour sessions. They are all remote. They are on a first come, first served basis, but they are unlimited visits. So as many times as you have trouble, you can pop into one of those and wait your turn and ask whatever questions you have. We also do email support as well. It's primarily focused on more complex issues or resolving e-file issues. If you have a very simple question, we'll send you back to one of our guides. But if it's a more complex question, we will be able to do the research and get back to you. And our support is open to all members. So if you can join us on a remote event, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. In physical events, as long as you can make it to our clinic, we're happy to welcome you to it. All right, we provide more on guides. So basic scenarios, we kind of walk you through the first basic part of doing your return. We've got 3 that are based on whether you are a student from India, if you have treaty benefits, or if you do not have treaty benefits. From there, we have a bunch of special circumstances guides that let you adjust your return based on things that sometimes people have, but most do not, so that we didn't want to put those in the basic and make everybody wade through those. And then we also have filing instructions, so how to e-file, or if you're required to, how to paper file. The vast majority of our students and clients should not need to paper file. And in those that do, the most we've seen are if you are married and your spouse does not have a social security number or an ITIN, you cannot e-file your Minnesota return, but you can still e-file your federal return. We strongly, strongly recommend that you do that because it will be much faster to get your return processed and your refund back to you. All right, so if you go to our website, you'll see this page, we'll send you to it. It says who is eligible to access our services. Again, if you have an email address that ends in .edu, you can request a membership. And that is where we are going to stop and take a break and look for the questions that we have from the chat. So, Elisa and Tracy, I don't know if you want to resident alien. There's a question about H-1B visas. So if you are under a different visa type, you can still use our tool to determine if you are a non-resident alien or not. And if you are a non-resident alien with a .edu email that meets our income limits, you can prepare your return with us. For the person who has a FICA tax refunded when filing the tax, that is not true. Please email us at taxassistance.com. Okay, when you get the forms, we'll go through what you do with the income documents that you received. Questions about Minnesota residency, we're not going to answer those specifically for individuals here. You'll want to go through our guide for about Minnesota residency and working in another state. So F1 and F1 OPT, yes, it's sort of the same. As long as you're on that F1 visa, you would still enter your visa visits in our non-resident alien tool. Then it's going to be up to how many years you were here on an F1 visa before whether you're going to be a resident alien or not. Gifts from parents, no matter where they're living, are not going to be taxed. So congratulations on having parents that gave you a gift. You basically, if you have income, you will still probably have tax withheld, so you will need to file an income tax returns. Let's see here. I'm seeing definitely some individual questions about if I need to file, what forms I need to file. So those are all going to be dependent on your personal situation. Usually tax withholding is going to be taken out of all of your wages, all of your wage statements. We can have Blaine answer that more specifically if he has any other information, but generally they're going to take out some tax from every payment that you receive. Yep, and then just one, so being tax exempt, so that you're not, non-resident aliens are not tax exempt. As an F1 student, you will be exempt from the substantial presence test. You still have to pay tax. No offense to our IRS people, but right, everybody has to pay tax. There's no way around it. It's just a question of what income you have to pay tax on and how much that tax is. All right. Okay, yes, if there's a question, an issue with the tax layer URL, that's probably, there's a bunch of questions that are relating to using our site. So we'll go through those. I think you're not using the correct link, and we'll show you how to do that. All right, so a question about dependents of children. So we have a special circumstances guide for dependents. So if you have a child that is a US citizen, you should review that dependents guide to determine if you would qualify to claim your child, and then kind of what the process is for entering that into your tax return.